What you just saw was a 2021 BMW S1000R with its bolts cut. Who had a chance to ride a big single R, because now there is also a smaller R, the F900R with a two-cylinder engine with a lot less power and only slightly less torque than the big one. So who once played with the S1000R knows what a wild animal it used to be. Crazy performance, awesome sound out of the four-cylinder inline engine with 165 horsepower and fantastic technology. Today, there is still crazy performance, still around the same power, and still there is also this wobbly behavior at higher speeds, which you will see in a moment in the video, and that still scares the shit out of me. This is despite I feel that I had to lean forward more than on the first generation of the R. There is also noticeably less of that super cool backfiring engine sound that used to be there in the first generation. It still sounds really nice for a four-cylinder engine, but seems to run more smoothly. And while this is generally a good thing, I feel like the previous generation sounded nicer with that more uneven idle. This is personal and you might feel differently, but if you are about to get the big R, really do consider giving it a proper exhaust system, even just a slip-on if you don't want to go crazy. A slip-on is what I would actually get myself today for the S1000R, and I believe that this extracts a lot of brutality that is so cool in this bike, and I myself love that. Do you guys actually care about how your bike sounds? Let me know in the comments, please. Now let me explain before this goes wild. With stricter and stricter emission regulations, especially in Europe, all the manufacturers have to civilize their motorcycles in terms of their, let's call it, exhaust systems. And obviously this may impact the sound of motorcycles that by default weren't the most quiet and in which it was actually the point. So just like the big R here. Now, this is not BMW's fault, so it's on us to go ahead and fix that on our own with the aftermarket exhausts. But that's not all, as I could see quite a few improvements comparing this new S1000R to the previous one. First noticeable difference is the front face design that now incorporates a completely new LED front light. It somehow looks exactly the same as in the smaller R, the F900R. Still, it gives a modern look that I personally don't like, as it now looks just like any other motorcycle from Japanese manufacturers. I think BMW could have done better and come up with something as original as the previous generation with its pug face, but more pretty this time. This new one is more pretty actually. The benefit of this new lamp is simply better light, both in dark conditions and also letting the bike be more visible in the daylight after activating the main light and not the daytime running light. I personally would not recommend using a daytime running light in a motorcycle, as even though it looks really cool most of the time, it actually doesn't shine as much as a regular light. Performance-wise, it's still a beast with as much to offer as before, so no worries here. The engine runs smoothly in terms of power delivery and in terms of reacting to throttle. It is not nervous at all, and it is easy to dose power in some low-speed situations. Now, in high-speed situations, what happens there is insane, because the quicker you go, the more quickly the bike accelerates. The gears seem to be pretty long, like in most four-cylinder motorcycles, and here as well, you may ride at the speed of 100 kilometers per hour in the first gear or in the last. It will obviously affect performance, but still is something that motorcycles with two-cylinder engines rarely do. If it's good for you or not, this is up to you. To me, that's slightly confusing at times, as I'm then basically changing gears just because I feel it's right, not because the bike actually really needs that. It only starts to make a significant difference once you reach higher speeds, but then on the S1000R, bloody hell, BMW has not fixed its issue that has been there from the beginning. Check it out in the footage. At around 150 kilometers while you're accelerating, the handlebar starts waving and the bike gets wobbly. There is a lot of wind hitting your chest, the front wheel feels light, and this is then the result. There may be a design issue, maybe an aerodynamics issue, or maybe it's the geometry that isn't the best. Anyway, it is there, it scares me a little like it used to, and well, so far nothing ever happened, so perhaps there's actually nothing to worry about. Now, who rides a naked bike at 150 kilometers per hour every day? It's not meant for high-speed riding, just like any other naked bike. There's no wind protection, and that's how it's meant to be. This may be an important information for you guys, though, I think. So keep that in mind. Now, there is another side of that to analyze. Slower riding in the city results in a lot of pressure on the rider's wrists, and because of the new handlebar being thin and hard, they're actually pretty similar to the previous one, this may get uncomfortable very quickly, and this is a result of that more forward bent position in this new one. Now, in my case, I like to keep 2 fingers on the front brake lever when I'm riding, especially in the city. It saved my butt many times. But the side effect of that on S1000R is that my right hand hurts during and after riding it. Again, you can fix that in 2 ways if you don't like that. First way is to install thicker grips. I'm just not sure if that makes sense since the original grips are heated here. And the second way is to ride more quickly. Then wind pressure on your chest perfectly balances things at around 100 kilometers per hour, and that may be your solution. Well, anyway, that's your choice, guys. I also experienced some balls issues of my own when braking, and I'm sorry for sharing such intimate stories, but I know how important those things may be later in everyday riding. Now, the R is a sports bike and has a proper sports bike thin seat. It is rather hard, and since I'm a rider that likes to hold the bike's fuel tank with my knees for maximum control, I sit rather close to the tank. The design here results in making me slightly uncomfortable when braking. So please go check if that's the case for you too. So performance is incredible. If you want to push it and have fun riding quickly, it's absolutely fantastic. However, at lower RPM, it of course isn't as flexible, and I would rather say that just like any other 4-cylinder motorcycle, it doesn't have that pull. Yes, it revs high, the torque is as low as possible, but still, this is not what you get in a twin. You just need to keep it higher in the range to benefit from all that craziness that's there to come. Now, as for the feel of the bike and balancing, it is perfect. There's nothing else to say. It's just ideal to me, totally neutral and easy to hold on to. Doesn't change its behavior with speed and leaning angle, and stays really completely predictable at all times. Traction control is also as good as it gets, and you don't even realize that it's working. It's really awesome. I rode over some slippery and dirty parts and tested it, and now in 2021 it is absolutely flawless. It wasn't before in the previous generation, in my opinion. This may depend on a riding mode or perhaps tires, but in the previous generation it felt more nervous. Here it's really top of the game. I remember that back in I think it was around 2010, when BMW was learning a lot in terms of their systems, traction control on boxer bikes was total rubbish. It would save you in one moment and then try to kick you off of the bike in another moment. So I'm super happy that this is solved once and for all. Good job, BMW. Thanks to it, the S1000R will be friendly even to riders who are new or fairly new to motorcycles. And I'm not kidding here, really. I think that throttle response is so predictable that it's totally up to you what the bike does, what you want the bike to do. There are no surprises. I should probably mention that this new generation has a new frame and is lighter because of that, and because of the engine being lighter too. But I'm not sure I can really feel it. It's like 5-6 kilograms, so perhaps in some extreme conditions the difference would be noticeable, but all generations just feel good here. Just replace the heavy exhaust system on the old one and it will weigh the same as the new one with stock exhaust. So what they have done with this new S1000R is that they have worked a bit on electronics to make them more precisely, to make them work more precisely. This means ABS and traction control giving you more confidence and also some enhanced possibilities of playing with the bike. Doing controlled wheelies and burning rubber, for example. Well, of course, you could do all that if you were a pro and would switch off all the electronics assistant, specifically traction control. Now, also, if you actually are a pro, switching traction control has always been easy on this bike, and it still is, since there is a dedicated single switch on the handlebar. So there is no need to scroll through the screen to get it done, going through the menus. Just click and hold and you can fly. No stoppies for you, however, at least inside the European Union, since it's now not allowed to be even able to turn ABS off if your bike is not for off-road use. As for more useful things, then the keyless access is fantastic and works flawlessly every time, if the bike has it, of course. One of the best additions to motorcycles ever, in my opinion. Brakes are good and give enough feel, but somehow not as good as in some heavier motorcycles like R1250 GS or RT. I think even XR, I felt a little bit more confident on S1000XR with the brakes. I'm not sure about why it's like that. Maybe it could be that position that would actually make me feel more uncomfortable when braking, because there would be more and more pressure applied on my wrist. So this may not necessarily mean that the bike is braking in a worse way, it's just an overall feel, but actually overall feel matters too. Anyway, I wouldn't be able to work the front brake with just one finger, and that can be also one of the things here in those circumstances of that position. And in those other two, actually, I would do it without any issues, those three, because I mentioned XR too. But I still do recommend keeping two fingers on the brake lever at all times. Rear brake here is just as a support, and don't expect too much from it. This is rather a light motorcycle, so it's understandable. I don't see any differences here between the current generation and the previous. Also, the gearbox could work a bit more smoothly, as for my taste. There is none of that clear click when changing gears, and I would wonder every time if I did change it or not. There's no such wondering if you're having and using a quick shifter though, and this bike actually had it. This works very well and it's totally fine to use it at speed. I had some issues finding the neutral, and most of the times I would need a few attempts jumping between the first and the second gear before finally getting the bike into neutral. So to sum up, if you are looking for a naked bike specifically and don't care about the bike being in fact a sports bike that's not really comfort oriented, then this new S1000R is better than the previous one in a few ways, except for the engine sound. There's actually nothing that I would say is worse. Even the big digital screen, where I'm not a fan of the whole concept itself, really is great in direct sunlight and now gives so much information that we just cannot ignore this as a benefit and as an improvement overall. If you do care about comfort, however, then look for a different type of bike for everyday riding, while this new big R will work great as a piece of art in your living room. Now, if you choose to ride the R, then fantastic high performance is still there. Its weaker lower end is typical for such bikes, and nothing really changed here in everyday riding. Handling is still great, while the brakes, transmission and wobbly behavior are still on the list of points that could get improved in the S1000R in the future, in my opinion. The design part is up to you guys, but please let me know if you prefer its new, prettier look, or if you like the first generation's original face more. If you like this video, please give it a like and subscribe to see the upcoming one. See ya!